we're going to look at the different areas of merchandising and marketing and the processes to get your vehicles in front of online shoppers and why that's important. I think we understand to a certain degree or to a large degree that these things are important, but just how impactful are these different items of merchandising that we're going to talk about today to actually converting those cars online into leads and sales, obviously. So the impact there and then the results. So how are we going to, first of all, accomplish these things faster, better than we have before, and how are we going to show the results? So when we go back to everybody else at our dealership, we can kind of show this positive impact and this value we're driving. So how I'm going to break that up is into 3 basic objectives today. And the first thing is I want a baseline level set on understanding the measurement of online time to market. We'll look at that from a couple different things, right? A couple different ways. We're going to look at that from a time perspective. We're going to look at that also from a financial perspective, and we have a good little exercise to kick that off. Then we're going to talk about 2 core areas of merchandising that I've talked about on previous webinars and we'll continue to talk about in many webinars to come around increasing quality and increasing the impact of capturing really good vehicle photos of your new and your used inventory, and also writing those strong, valuable vehicle descriptions around that inventory. And once we kind of understand how to measure it, we understand about the importance of the quality of the merchandising, then we're going to jump right into tactics around increasing quality and decreasing time for fully merchandised online listings. So that's what I hope to accomplish today. And I know a lot of times when you do these talks, you want to kind of break out a story or an analogy to kind of frame the whole thing up. I'm not going to do that today. What we're going to start with today is a little bit of math. It's pretty easy math, but I think what we're going to do here is we're going to frame up maybe some things that we understand, maybe some things we don't understand, but let's keep it easy and let's talk about dollars and time. So what I have here is a basic calculator pulled right out of an Excel spreadsheet and is now editable and can be changed right now within the presentation, which we're going to do in just a minute. But let me walk you through the model really fast. What I'm trying to do overarching is have you think about the inventory that comes into your dealership every month. So when I mean new cars on the lot, that very first variable, I don't mean just new cars, like the 2018 models that are coming in. I mean new to your lot. So that's new cars, also used cars from the auction or from a trade or dealer trade or someone coming in to trade in their car for another vehicle. How many new on-the-lot cars per month? And then the next variable speaks to merchandising and the time associated to it. So the number of days until vehicle is fully merchandised. So it's got some pictures on it, it's got a description, it's priced, and it's now in front of online shoppers on a website, classified site, all the different places you're advertising. And then we're going to talk about average holding costs per day. And I have the default value here is $40. We brought that out from NADA, but through me talking with several different dealerships across the country, that's always going to vary. So we're going to switch that up too and look at it a couple different ways. When you plug in those numbers, what we get is we get 2 values essentially. We get the monthly holding costs for new to your lot inventory before online advertising. So what type of so let's define holding costs really quick. I'm sure we've heard the term. Wanted to make sure I got kind of your Harvard Business Review definition of what a holding cost is to level set. So holding costs are the costs associated with storing inventory that remains unsold. And these costs are just one component of total inventory costs. So it's a component of inventory costs that goes along with things like ordering costs, transportation, shortage costs. Holding costs is another variable here. So what we're trying to frame up is how much are you incurring in holding costs per month before anybody is even seeing the new to lot inventory that's coming on. So this is just one example that I started out with, and this would be from conversations I've had, kind of your small franchise dealer, right? Not a large one, maybe a medium in certain months, but definitely a small franchise dealer that's bringing 50 new to lot cars on the used car side every single month. It's taking them 10 days to get that car delivered, get it through reconditioning, get pictures, get descriptions, and get that car in front of online shoppers. It's taking them 10 days. I wouldn't call it an average, but that's a scenario that we do see very often. And we'll use the NADA value for holding costs of $40 per day. So when you run that model, you're looking at per month $20,000 in holding costs before anybody sees any of those 50 new to lot cars.
Wow.
And when you look at that on a per car perspective, that's 400 vehicles. So that's just the first example. But what I want to do is I want to run you through one I talked about yesterday with a Ford dealership in the Midwest. And we talked about this model specific to auction inventory. So I'm going to change the model. I'm on another screen here. I'm going to change these numbers and show you what we were talking about. So specific to vehicles he buys at auction, he buys 17 per month. And it takes him 8 days to get that car through reconditioning, fully merchandised and online, a lot closer to the average. I think he's doing pretty well. And in the model he wanted to use $30 per day in average holding costs. So you're going to see the screen update here. Oh, go backwards. Get that off that screen.
Okay.
And there you go. So in just auction inventory, you look through the same, the same example. You look now at just auction new to lot cars, a little bit over $4,000 per month. It's the 50 grand a year, and then you look at $240 eating into that vehicle from each vehicle from a holding cost perspective. So two ways to look at that model. Either way, costs that aren't being maximized. Nobody's seeing these cars online, so you're not getting eyeballs, leads, people into your store. So this is really valuable as we start to frame up time to market and how to reduce that, because inevitably you want to get this online sooner to maximize these holding costs you have on your inventory. But let's not let me just have an example. Let's kind of go out to the audience, Eliana.
Oh.
I would love your input on this. Is there anybody out there that wants to put in the chat just the first three numbers? New to lot cars per month, number of days it's taking you to get it merchandised and online, and the average holding cost number you want to use. And if you aren't sure, we'll use the $40 number. So, Eliana, you want to help me get a volunteer here?
I think that would be a great idea. Now, this is ironic because, like, we had a few people who wrote in, that's crazy. Yeah, dude, that is crazy. $20,000, you're already $20,000 in the hole. You didn't even get the cars out on the lot yet. That's crazy. Okay, it looks like we already have our first volunteer. His name is Tony. He says 400 new cars per month. He says he calls them fresh cars.
Right.
He says average number of days is 6 days. And he believes his average holding cost per day is $32 per day. And that's from Tony.
Thanks, Tony. And it's really exact numbers. I appreciate that. So I just plugged that into the model.
Okay.
Give it a second to update. And there you go.
Wow.
So high volume store there, Tony. Good. What I'll say is you got a lot of fresh inventory coming in. So, that's a task in itself. A lot of physical assets to be working with. Number of days until merchandising online, that's pretty good. That's really good at 6 days. It's a little under that 7 to 10 day average that we see. Really exact on the holding costs. Still some costs out there though. So you look at a number like that, it's still beneficial, even if you're a high volume store, to drive that down. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Tony, thanks for volunteering. And just for the sake of moving on, I'm going to move on through this. But anybody wants to shoot an email to me, and I'll send the calculation. You'll also have it in the PowerPoint that you'll get after the webinar, and happy to talk to anybody about this calculation further.
So I'm just curious. I'm pretty sure you're going to cover this, but I'm just going to be curious. If the average is 7 to 10 days, if we employ these best practices that you're about to tell us about, how much money could somebody like Tony, for instance, save? Like, could we knock off a couple days from that? And how much does that save us? Like, if instead of 6 days, if it's 4 days, is that going to save him like $10,000 or something a month?
It'll save him more. It'll save him 25.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot of money. That's $300,000 a year if we just reduce that time by 2 days. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
And there's
okay.
a couple different levers that we can pull as we go through this to easily get 2 days off that process when it comes to getting those cars online in front of shoppers. 2 days, no sweat.
Okay. All right. Tony wrote back in. He says, we're always looking at our process. He would love to have that calculator. And he says, by the way, that's just our used numbers. So thank you, Tony, for volunteering that. And by the way, Sharpie wrote and he says, I love this webinar already. So let's go. Let's do this. What else you got to tell us?
Yeah, so let's move through and let's start getting a little bit tactical now about what we want to do about this, right? So that was kind of the first section. We understand the measurement now, both from a time perspective and from a financial perspective. Let's now talk about quality, because if I talk about one thing today, I don't want to sacrifice quality as we're kind of reducing that online time to market. I want to make sure we're putting really high quality ads into our marketing for our vehicles. So it starts really with two components. I'm going to talk about them primarily. There's others too. I'll touch on those a little as I go through, but what I want to do is I want to increase quality for photos and vehicle descriptions, and we're going to measure and kind of go through these in two different, I guess, categories. You've got photos and how they're impacting online advertising. Just how much are they? And which photos impact online advertising? I think that's a good question to ask ourselves. And we're going to do something very similar with vehicle descriptions. So let's jump right into photos. So I want to kind of just jump two data points out right away to frame up this argument. And this is from very recent study around the power and the impact of pictures done by Cox Automotive. I want to start with the second data point, actually. And that's 9 out of every 10 car shoppers consider photos extremely important when shopping online. So I think that we all know that photos are important to shopping online. Tony was talking about the Prime Day, right, where we had a lot of sales going on Amazon outside of automotive. And you're obviously going to make that purchase decision by doing what? Going online and looking at photographs of that item before you purchase it. So let's kind of table that for a second, because what we want to do is we want to dig a layer deeper about what type of photos and a stock photo versus just a couple photos and what's really driving that extremely important factor with car shoppers. But before I go there, what I want to show you is another thing very, very recent, and it's a growing trend. 40% of consumers are likely to purchase a vehicle based on images they view online without seeing the vehicle in person. That speaks to a little bit more of this digital retailing, starting the transaction online, that trend that we're starting to see with younger car shoppers coming up. So what I'm excited to see over time is the trend of that 40% and where that goes in years to come. But it's important, right? It's important to car shoppers. But just how important is it to our dealership? And when I look at that, you think about lead submissions, right? And so what we did was, what CarStory did in a recent study was they looked at lead submission for vehicles with photos. And 50% higher lead submission rate than those without any images. These were just vehicles with just any amount of photos on them. It was less than 20. It was between about 5 and 10. 50% higher lead submission rate. But then as you go into more photos, you get 56% higher lead conversion rate for vehicles with 20 images, and then just over 70% higher lead submission rate for vehicles with 30 images. That points back to a question that I get a lot when I'm talking to different dealers across the country. It's what's the sweet spot, right, around photos? How many should I be taking? How much time investment should I make? And it's always going to vary by dealership and the resources you have, or if you're using a lot service provider to come out, or if you're doing it yourself. But what we're starting to see is the more you take, you're going to see a better performance from a lead submission perspective, and you're also going to see some increases in terms of VDPs, which is where I want to spend a lot of time talking about when it comes to photos. So two tables right here. Want to walk you through the data. This is, again, framing up impact and then how much time you want to be spending capturing photos for this inventory. So if you look at the one on the left, we have 6 scenarios, very common scenarios, in terms of merchandising and marketing and advertising cars online. And let's think specific to pictures. So we separated it between used and CPO increases in VDPs per listing and new car increases in VDPs per listing. So we go through the scenarios here, and the first one is the one we want to avoid, right? I think we know that, and that's stock photos versus no photos at all. So you see, increases in VDPs. It's actually less for stock photos versus no photos. A photo coming soon, or some call to action that more photos are coming. So that's kind of the dark side of the story. Let's get into some of the brighter sides of the story, because it's what we're seeing a lot more year over year with dealerships across the country. And this is multiple photos of the vehicle. So, you're talking your 20 plus, 30 plus, 40 plus images on a vehicle versus no photos at all, a photo coming soon. no surprise here in terms of it doing better in terms of increases in VDPs, but kind of shocking in just how much better it's doing in terms of increases of VDPs. So for used car and CPO, 224% more VDPs for multiple vehicles with multiple photos versus no photos, and 73% more on the new car side. Now we jump into a newer data point that we were looking at, and it makes it very interesting for the rest of this presentation around reducing time to market. A single custom photo, so just one real photo of the car versus a stock photo, 220 or 121% more VDP, more increases in VDP for using CPO, and that's 13% on the new car side. So pretty strong. That points back to a topic I talk about all the time. Do we wait for reconditioning to get done? Do I shoot a full set of photos before reconditioning? How does that get handled? And what we're seeing is, if you're just, when that car gets delivered or right before it goes through that reconditioning process, just if you shoot a couple photos of the car, you're going to see positive impact in terms of increases in VDPs for new and used car. Now you get into what I kind of called out specifically, which is the one that has the most impact, and the one I really wanted to talk to you about, because in those 7 to 10 days before that car is fully merchandised and online, a lot of times we're seeing stock photos, and they're really not performing well in terms of increases in VDPs per listing on used car CPO and new car. So 262% more increases in VDPs and 77% increases in VDPs on the new car side. So really staggering, and really kind of tells the story to take those high quality, good set of 20, 30, 40 plus photos on the inventory if you can do it. We'll talk about photo ranges in just a second. Now we want to look at, okay, multiple photos of the car versus a single. So that comes back to a conversation I have on, okay, I've shot 1 or 5 pre-recon photos. Is it really worth going back and taking the time investment to get now a full set of photos on the car? And you can see, indeed it does. So 64% VDP increases on used car and CPO, a little bit over 50 on the new car side. So what I wanted to do is, in the last piece, is bring one other area of merchandising to the process, and that's pricing the inventory. Prices, I'm not going to talk as deeply into price today as we are into photos or vehicle descriptions, but obviously a core, one of the more important pieces of an online listing, obviously dealers want to know or car shoppers want to know what the price is on the inventory. So multiple custom photos with a price versus no price, you see the increases there in terms of VDPs on used and new cars. So thought this information was extremely important for you to align the strategy at your dealership. How much time investment should I take into shooting photos pre-recon and then shooting post, or do I just shoot post-recon? Here's the increases in VDPs for you to help with that. Let's then look on the one on the right here, which is improvement in VDP views over the average listing. So at face value, without walking through this, you look at those 1 to 5 photos, those pre-recon photos, and you see, well, we shouldn't do that. They're getting negative. They're negative improvement. Well, that's over the average listing, which is going to have, your 20 to 30 photos on it, 20 to 35. What isn't on this diagram at all is no photos or stock photos. So if you look at the table on the left, you see how much better the actual photos are. So don't let the average listing confuse you on the right. Shooting 1 to 5 photos is still very valuable because it's going to perform better than a stock photo or no photo at all. You go on now to 6 to 10 photos, which is another kind of your pre-recon before the car is fully ready for the front line. That's a common set of images you're going to take, getting closer to that average listing now. Then you jump ahead into above the average photos per listing, that 20 to 35. You look at 36 to 40 and then over 40. And you see improvement in VDPs start to go in the right direction compared to the average listing. I see a lot of different thoughts on this, a lot of different, white papers published, a lot of different blogs on, hey, 10 photos is going to get the job done. And I think that the answer from where I sit is it's okay. It does better than what a stock photo is going to do or what no photos are going to do. But what you want to do is you want to get that 20 to 30 or more than that if the vehicle warrants that, because I'm looking at the data and I'm seeing positive impact on engagement on the listings, which are going to drive leads, showroom traffic, and obviously sales. So definitely wanted to spend some time to look at this.
I love that you brought these to us, because we actually had already, before you even put that slide up, already gotten a few questions and comments from Tony. He said, so will 1,000,000 pictures get me 100%? You know, and then Dan has a question, which I'll save for later, but it does have to do with photos. So keep those questions coming, audience. We're going to be getting to those soon. And look at all these great pictures. Where do we go from here? Are you showing us how many pictures we should have?
Well, this drives down into just the next layer where two things. So which photos do car shoppers want to see in a photo set? And that's different from the order you shoot them in. So these are the two graphics here. So the one on the left is a rank order. We asked car shoppers, what are the shots that they want to see that are going to influence the next step in the buying process? And I think the results here are somewhat surprising, and not in terms of which shots made the list, but the order in which they made them. So look at number one, kind of the ODOM, the mileage here. And then you go to 2, the dash control panel, and then 3, the cockpit. What does that say if these are the top 3 shots that car shoppers are saying influence us to take the next step? Well, look at the shots themselves. These are right in the driver's side. This is them now imagining themselves, starting to create that experience online of them wanting to be in that car. And the more we can get them immersed in that experience, you know, the more passionate they're going to start to be about moving forward into that unit. As you move through them now, you see a lot of the standard shots that we take. You get into interior, exterior, navigation, if it has that, even trunk space, and then you get down into the console. Those are our top 13. So let's map that now to a recommended set of the order you want to shoot them to maximize your marketing online. So you can almost start to draw that one-to-one comparison, how all 13 shots are in the one to the right. There might be 1 or 2 missing here in the example, but you know, you want to capture those 13 on the left, but integrate them into kind of the standard way of shooting photos and advertising them online, starting with the exterior to really get a look and feel of the vehicle just like you would walking on the lot. Get into the interior, start to see the features that really matter, and then at the end start to get into those technical things or the more detailed pieces around engine. 10% of women said no, 38% of men said no. And to take it a step further, over half of used car listings today don't even have vehicle descriptions online. I have take specific exception to that because with a lot of the technology and where it's going across the space, doesn't matter who you're using for inventory to get their merchandising and out online, there's a way to automatically generate these descriptions. Think about an automatically generated description similar to those pre-recon photos. You can always go back and put your personal touch on it later, but if you're waiting 2-3 days because you know, you have a million other things going on, and that car's online without a vehicle description, you're costing yourself potential opportunities. And the reason I say that is because 26% more car buyers are willing to travel 30-plus miles to view a vehicle with custom comments. We got that right off of AutoTrader. So we could do a better job in providing the info that they need. We can do a better job getting the descriptions online. And when we do that, we're going to see increased awareness and increased engagement from our shoppers. So let's take that now into what type of keywords, what types of things are shoppers looking for today in terms of vehicle description. So one of the things coming out of the Car Story study I referenced earlier was consumers listing condition as the #1 factor when buying a car. And you know, you think that from the consumer's lens, they're not thinking about reconditioning the same way that we are. They're thinking around Carfax, vehicle history, one owner, and if there was any work done to the car, they want to know about that. So you come down to now looking at any type of reconditioning information and comments. When we kind of scraped out the web for the study, 2.4% of comments included some reference of reconditioning information. So it's the #1 factor when buying the car, but we're not seeing that a lot in vehicle descriptions. So something to look at, a best practice to bring into as you're generating vehicle descriptions. Let's take a look at something else quick, and let's look at keywords now. So CDK did a study on this, and I was waiting for something like this to come out because you know, I've always been generally interested in it. What they did was they looked at shopper types and what type of keywords and words within a vehicle description registered as high engagement and low engagement. And they brought that into a variety of different shopper types. Women and Generation X are there. So you see the ones on the women's side that are high and low engagement, and then you look down at Generation X at the high and low there. So one to call out is around Generation X ages 34 to 55. When you think about the high engagement ones, you think about luxury, you think about package. Coming into that age group, they're starting to maybe make a little bit more income and start to think about what's that next level vehicle they want to get in. So specifically around package, you think about luxury being one that's a key. With packages, it comes to the BMW dealers out there and your installed option packages, and just how much that drives engagement when somebody's looking for a luxury type of vehicle. Those option packages that are added onto the vehicle really can drive a lot of engagement and really makes for a better listing. And I have a piece on that I'm going to touch on in just a moment. Let's look at a couple more from the shopper type ebook here. Let's look at college grad, probably the closest I'm going to come to talking about millennials in this webinar. Let's just call them college grads. And what was low engagement and what was high engagement there. You look at low company warranty, not a lot of brand loyalty coming from this shopper type. So again, we're not talking about influencing the buying decision. We're talking about the way we're talking about our cars, the way we're talking about our dealership and what's resonating with those shopper types. And then you got parent there as well, and not as many surprises there. I especially call out row because maybe they're looking for a van type of thing and type of vehicle, and how many rows does it have to make sure we can get the whole family in there and get on the summer vacation that I'm sure they're going to be going on over the next couple weeks. So thought that was interesting, wanted to share that with you. And then let's now drill down into a framework. So we understand the importance of vehicle descriptions. We know what kind of keywords we want to look at as we're lining up descriptions to match the inventory that then matches the buyer persona that's out there. So how do we construct it, right? Or if we're having it automatically generated for us through technology, are we hitting on all three of these? And I've talked to, in previous webinars about the 3 Bs of building a vehicle description. So to touch on it on a high level, what you want to do is you want to build a connection. You want to build a connection between the shopper persona and the inventory that you have, that vehicle that you have. Take it a step further, build a connection between them and the dealership, why they would want to do business with you. Then you want to be specific, and that's when you want to talk about why this specific car, not this year, make, model combination, this exact VIN is great. What are the details about that? What type of packages are in there? What type of equipment? What type of miles per gallon? All these different elements specifically to that car that are going to drive a consumer's interest. And then finally, we're going to balance the message. And what I mean by that is you don't want to just hit them with a whole bunch of details, because that's going to apply to a segment of car shoppers, but not every segment. I think everybody needs to know a little bit about the car, but there's a segment of shoppers too that want to know it hasn't won any awards. Did it get a Kelley Blue Book award? Has it won an IIH Top Safety Pick? Is there any reviews, editorials out there? What's Edmund saying about it? Is a Kelley Blue Book review on that? And being able to bring that into the vehicle description really rounds it out for a vast majority of your car shoppers, because they want to do business with you. They want to do business with the inventory. They want to know about the inventory, and they want to know about what others are saying about the inventory. So you kind of put all those in the description. You're starting to build a story that's pretty strong for your shopper. Okay, so we're going to get to our last segment here, and it's kind of been all building up to this. And this is how can we increase or keep quality and decrease time for fully merchandised online listings. So again, what is the impact of a fully merchandised online listing, and how can I increase online speed to market for online listings? Let's talk about both of those. So how do they perform versus incomplete listings? Talk about fully merchandised. This is like one of I think my favorite data point to throw out on the webinar, and it was from a LotLink study, and I thought it was extremely interesting. 81% of cars sold after receiving 30 VDPs in 30 days or less, compared to 65% of cars that received fewer than 30 VDPs in the same period. This single data point summarizes everything I wanted to talk to you guys about today. High quality merchandising earlier on in the cycle, because what you're going to see is that 30-day cycle does not start the first time that car makes it online. We talked about the calculation. We talked about holding costs. That starts on the first day you acquire the inventory. So the quicker you can start that 30 VDPs and 30-day counter, obviously that's going to equate to selling vehicles and vehicle turn. So really strong stuff there. So we took that down a level and we started to ask dealers about this. And we said, okay, what is the impact of a fully merchandised online listing versus something that's incomplete? And we the dealer and I and the team here use an average market price vehicle at $20,000 and kind of sum it up. Not revealing options, not revealing those installed option packages that really can add value to the car. Could cost $1,000 to $2,000 in market value per vehicle. Not being able to advertise that and really justify and validate your pricing strategy, that could cost you. And a dealership selling 150 cars a month, which again is a medium, kind of a small franchise dealer, honestly, you're looking at $500,000 honestly annually over that if you fail to even reveal those packages and those options that really drive the value of the price of that vehicle. We also found by talking to dealers that stores effectively merchandising, so kind of taking this methodology and bringing it into their dealership about merchandising vehicles earlier in the cycle, shooting a couple quick photos, getting a description automatically generated right when the car hits the inventory tool. Gross per unit increase of 10% compared to when they weren't adopting it on the new side, and 15% on the used side. So kind of a little bit of a before and after shot of taking into consideration fully merchandising the cars and getting them online as quick as possible. So let's move on. So how can you increase it, right? So just a common example to frame it up, won't spend a lot of time. Let's look specifically on the auction side. If you're in a wider state like I am in PA and have a lot of auction options, or if it's out of state, it could take 3 days for that car to be acquired and transported to the store. Might be a little bit less, might be a little bit more. Either way, you bring it into reconditioning. There's another 3 days. Again, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on service traffic. And then finally, when it's ready, you got 4 days to get photos, a description, pricing, get that loaded up, and get that out online. So that's, if you look at it sequentially and do it that way, over half the audience in the poll said that, you got 10 total days. Think about hours and minutes that's costing you, and that's just on the auction side. So let's solve this problem. How do we solve it? How can we start to shave this stuff down? And I think it starts with understanding the flow of your inventory data. This is brand new information that we just pulled on the HOMENET side. I wanted to share it with you. Really interesting. So today, franchise dealers are using an average of 6 different sources, 6 different tools to prep a vehicle for online advertising. So to walk you through what those 6 may be, you could look at a DMS, you could look at a pricing tool, you could look at a feed of photos, you could look at one specific to vehicle descriptions. You also have a VINDA code, which is another source that needs to be initiated. Usually that's in your inventory tool, but it's another source of vehicle information. And then there is some level, at least, of manual entry, manual editing. So that's just one example of the average of 6 different sources. Once it's ready, they're sending that inventory data and photos to 21 online destinations on average. That's a 40% increase since 2010. We can spend probably a whole dealer on webinar talking about why that's happening, but the point that we want to drive home here is there's several different sources to create an online listing. You're sending to more places online than you ever have before. So do you truly understand how these connections are being made? Is there a step in the chain of getting the vehicle through information from one of those 6 sources to one of those 21 online destinations that may not be necessary? Do you really understand, or is it a clouded mess of wires that data is going over on this tool and then going over to this one and then eventually making it to my website? Or do you understand the fact that if you can centralize that and really understand the data flow, take out those unnecessary links in the chain and really streamline how you're getting those cars out online? I mean, we talked about Tony before. He said 6 days. What happens if we bring it down to 4? I've seen dealerships clean this up and buy a day and a half just doing this. So this is just the first one that you kind of want to audit your data flow to make sure it's as streamlined as it possibly can. Then we jump now into the physical side, and I wanted to at least touch a little bit on reconditioning because obviously that's an element in the life cycle. Also, friends over Rapid Recon did a case study with the dealership, and just really interesting information here. This is about now improving reconditioning. Now, I want to spend a little time talking about this, but I don't, again, we were talking about it before, I don't want to let reconditioning kind of slow up the merchandising process. But again, we want to shave days off. We want to reduce time to market here. So reconditioning vehicles and getting them to the sales line 3 days faster, it realized for the case study that Rapid Recon did, over 290,000 in annual sales growth. They also found by using that dealer that 2.5 days shaved off recon equates to 1 additional inventory turn. So again, we're looking at examples on how we can shave it down. If we can improve processes there on the recon side, you're obviously going to get that number of days down and maximize that holding cost before online advertising. But there's a lot of factors there. On the service side, understandable. So let's not let that get in the way. Let's get back to the pre-recon photos. Let's get back into doing automatic vehicle descriptions at the moment the vehicle is ready for syndication. So that way we're not waiting on these things to get done. It may still take a little bit of time. We can always get better, but at least we're not letting that get in the way of merchandising. So that's a way to either improve the recon process or improve merchandising during the recon process. Didn't want to, have a webinar here without touching a little bit on mobile. We know that about 90% of internet sales managers use devices on the mobile side every day to conduct business. But what type of business are you conducting with the mobile device? Are you maybe doing 1 or 2 things specific to the applications of the providers that you're using? Is there more you can do? Can you actually bring that into your merchandising before the car is ready for the front line? Doing a quick data collection, capturing those elements you're seeing on the car, and telling a story with a vehicle description. Even doing a VIN code I've seen helps. So you get the car in off of a trade, you understand the car, do a VIN explosion, and you can start to see all the different equipment and all the different options on the car that can really help you later on tell the story. So just even understanding your vehicle using the mobile device will be helpful. And then obviously photo video capture. There's a lot of tools out there that can do that. And if you don't have one, you got your device. iPhone, Android, they can do their own photo and video. Capture that, again, earlier in the process. Shave that time off and use something that you already are using today. And then, finally, last one here is implement in-transit or pre-recon merchandising. Because, in transit, that's specific to auction vehicles. Shoot a couple quick photos at the auction or right when it gets through the lane. You want to do an image overlay. Didn't talk a lot about overlays today, but they're extremely important. That makes sure that you indicate to the shopper that more photos are coming soon or that it's en route to the dealership, and then how you're describing the vehicle. In your vehicle description, if you can see that there at the top, on its way to the dealership, call now to be the first to schedule a test drive. You're being transparent that it's on its way or that it's finishing up recon, and you're also providing a call to action for them to be the first one there to get into that car and obviously purchase that vehicle. So to kind of tie a bow on that, to go back to the calculation that we did, right? You think about maybe the first example here that I threw out there, the 10+ days, and you're looking at a 6 to 8 times per year inventory turn depending on volume. Then we start to talk about, how you can understand your data flow, how you can understand how to use mobile, how to integrate better with recon, how to talk about vehicles before recon or before they're arrived at your store and being able to do that. As you run through these processes here, the acquisition, the floor planning, detail, recon, merchandising, and then transportation, inventory management, all those areas. We talk about how we can bring that down, and we bring that down to 3 days. You think about something like improve recon 2.5 days. You understand data flow. That buys you a day and a half. You start to do a little bit more on your mobile device, a little bit more pre-recon or in-transit merchandising. That brings it down. So you bring that down 5, 6 days, all the way down to 3 days. And you see right there what that can do from an inventory turn per year perspective. So obviously it's important for marketing, but doing these, reducing that other stuff that as well. So feel free to reach out to me. I can try to dig up some more stuff. Those were the primary sources I used today. Action items, in case you were trying to frame up what we want to do next. So got 4 there. Walk you through them quick. Understand the earliest opportunity or dealership for capturing photos. 1 to 5 photos before recon is better than a stock photo. A lot better, and we had the data there to back that up. Work with whoever's handling inventory, whether you're doing it yourself or if there's someone, a lot service provider coming in and doing great work for you there. Make sure descriptions are automatically generating before vehicle advertising. Again, you can always go back and update it when you have time. We talked about in the poll question, right? understand the total time in days, even hours. The real sharp ones are doing it in hours. It takes to get a vehicle fully merchandising online. And then finally, understand your data flow. Understand the quickest path to getting a vehicle fully merchandised and online. So those are the 4 kind of action items. Want to run to some Q&A now, right, Eliana?
Yeah, we got a couple things to go over before that, but yes, we are going to do Q&A. So if you have a question for Russ Daniels on how to get your